Today, we're going to talk about a hidden tax. It's one that millions of people are paying every single day at work, and you might be one of them. Now, it's not a tax on your income, but it's a tax on something way more valuable: your trust, your creativity, and yeah, even the company's bottom line. Let's dig into what this surveillance tax is really costing all of us.
Seriously, just for a second, picture this. What if every time you stopped typing to, think, to connect two big ideas, or just to stare out the window for a moment to problem solve, what if that triggered an alert on your manager's dashboard? And nope, this is not some far-off dystopian future I'm describing. This is the real, everyday experience for thousands of employees right now at the IT giant Cognizant. This isn't a maybe, it's a reality, and it's a huge shift in how work is managed. Okay, so how in the world does this actually play out? Well, that brings us to what's being called the 5-minute rule, and it's time to look under the hood at the mechanics of this new kind of micro-surveillance. The technology that makes all this possible has a pretty blunt name: Bossware. You've probably heard of it. It's basically a catch-all term for any software that lets a company track, well, pretty much everything you do on your computer. We're talking login times, your keystrokes, and sometimes even random screenshots of your screen.
And right here, you can see the massive disconnect. The official corporate line from Cognizant was that their software, called Prohance, was just to find process inefficiencies. Corporate speak. But the technical reality? It's giving managers a minute-by-minute, over-the-shoulder view of what everyone is doing, flagging an employee as idle if their mouse or keyboard doesn't move for just 300 seconds.
And that really gets to the core, fundamental flaw in all of this. For knowledge workers, programmers, writers, strategists, their most valuable work is the stuff you can't see. It happens between the ears. It's thinking. And since this system can't measure thought, it just defaults to measuring the only thing it can: physical motion. It's basically saying, if you're not clicking, you're not working, which is just wrong.
So let's zoom out for a second, because this is so much bigger than just one company. Cognizant is just one piece of a much, much larger puzzle. The whole Bossware ecosystem is exploding, and it goes way beyond just tracking if your mouse is moving.
You can really see the whole spectrum right here. It starts off kind of simple with what we'd call presence monitoring, like Dell tracking badge swipes to make sure people are in the office. Then you level up to input telemetry, which is exactly what Cognizant is doing. But then it gets way more invasive. You've got visual capture, where software like Hubstaff, used by Upwork, takes random screenshots. And at the far end of the spectrum, algorithmic profiling. Think about the reports of Amazon using AI to try and predict flight risk or even deter union activity. Each step is a deeper intrusion.
So no matter which tool a company uses, what's the message it's sending to its people? Well, the subtext is always, always the same. It's telling a skilled, hired professional, we don't actually trust you. We don't think you can handle your own time, so we're going to watch you like a hawk.
But why? Why would leaders do this? Well, psychologically, it all seems to boil down to what you could call the micromanager's fallacy. When leaders feel insecure or out of control, especially with remote work, they reach for data, any data. It becomes this kind of digital comfort blanket. It gives them the illusion of control, even if the data they're collecting is completely meaningless.
Of course, you push people like this, and what happens? They push back. It's human nature. People don't just roll over and accept it. They get creative. And this has sparked a whole underground resistance, a subculture focused on one simple goal: beat the algorithm.
This whole situation is a perfect textbook example of something called Goodhart's Law. It's a super important idea that basically says the moment a measure becomes the main target, it stops being a good measure. Tell people they're being judged on mouse clicks, and guess what? You'll get a ton of mouse clicks. You won't necessarily get great work, but you'll get clicks. The metric becomes totally useless.
And this has created this whole weird shadow economy of mouse jigglers. I mean, you've got giant companies like Wells Fargo firing employees for faking keyboard activity. You've got online forums just filled with these clever, improvised hacks to fool the system. All of that amazing employee ingenuity, that problem-solving skill you hired them for, it's now being used to defeat their own management. The company has literally turned its own people into the enemy.
And just to show you how wild this gets, here's one of my favorite low-tech hacks. You literally just take an old-school analog watch, put your optical mouse on top of it, and the little sweeping second hand is enough to trick the sensor into thinking you're working. It's both brilliant and completely ridiculous at the same time.
Look, this whole cat and mouse game, it's not just some funny anecdote. It has huge, massive economic consequences. Which brings us to the real heart of the issue, the staggering cost of distrust versus what we could call the high trust dividend. Just take a second and look at this number. $8.9 trillion. According to Gallup, that's the estimated annual cost of employee disengagement to the global economy. And that disengagement, it's a direct consequence of these low trust environments. We are talking about a truly mind-boggling amount of waste.
So at the end of the day, it really comes down to two totally opposite ways of running a business. On the left, you've got the insecure enterprise. It demands presence, it measures inputs like clicks, and it's all about control. But on the right, you have the secure enterprise. It provides context, it measures what actually matters, the outcomes, and its foundation is trust.
And maybe the most famous example of a secure enterprise is Netflix. Their entire culture is built around this simple but powerful idea, context, not control. Their philosophy is, look, if we hire talented adults and give them the proper context for what needs to get done, we don't need to control them. They famously don't even track vacation days.
And does it pay off? Oh yeah, the numbers don't lie. This is that high trust dividend in action. Look at this. Netflix generates an absolutely astounding $3.1 million in revenue per employee. Meanwhile, a company like Patagonia, also famous for its high trust culture, has employee turnover of less than 4% a year. Trust isn't just a nice to have, it's a financial superpower.
All right, let's wrap this all up. What we've seen are two fundamentally different paths a company can go down. One is a destructive downward spiral fueled by fear, and the other is a powerful virtuous cycle fueled by trust. This is the insecurity loop. It all starts with management's fear of losing control. That leads them to impose surveillance. But that just destroys employee trust. So what do employees do? They start engaging in productivity theater. Just clicking around to look busy. The managers see this bad data and think, oh no, we need even more surveillance. Eventually, all your best and brightest people get fed up and leave, and the company just stagnates. It's a death spiral. But then there's the alternative, the prosperity cycle. This starts with trust. Management provides context and then gets out of the way. That gives employees real autonomy. Their own internal motivation kicks in, and they become highly engaged. They feel safe, so they innovate. Your top talent sticks around, their knowledge compounds year after year, and the company just soars. It is a completely different world. So if you only take one single thing away from this explainer, please let it be this. Trust is not a soft skill. It's not a fuzzy, feel-good concept. It is a hard economic asset. It's a strategic decision that has a clear, powerful, and measurable return on investment. And that really just leaves one final question for you to think about for your own job, your own company. Are you paying for software to track keystrokes? Paying managers to watch the watchers? And paying the ultimate price of replacing the great people who leave because they refuse to be micromanaged? In other words, is your company paying the surveillance tax?